Hey everyone, I'm Rather Incoherent, and today I'm back with the conclusion of my live gameplay tutorial series for Arkham Horror the card game. Last time I forgot to count victory before we ended it. We have the 6 cultists in the victory display worth 1 each, and we have a couple of locations on the board worth 1 each as well. We have 1 at Miskatonic University, 1 at Northside, 1 at Downtown, and 1 at the Graveyard, for a total of 10 experience, so let's go upgrade our decks. Once again, talking about every card in the game is a little bit much, so I'll just be talking about the cards I am choosing to put in the actual deck upgrades that I'm making. And that means I have to talk a bit more about Pete Sylvester because he hasn't gotten played yet despite being one of the best cards in the deck. Pete Sylvester is, in effect, infinite horror soak, which is incredibly valuable. Especially in Daniela Rays because one of her best weapons is the Meat Cleaver, which can inflict horror on you to deal extra damage. None of this has gotten played so far, but it is a very important part of the deck and may well finally get to show itself in this last scenario. Also, I couldn't help but notice Daniela took a whole shitload of damage last game, which feels like a fluke, but maybe it's not. So since my final build would include protective gear, I'm deciding to buy that early. And this ultimately makes the deck way too expensive, so for my last 2 experience, I bought an upgraded emergency cache. And the cards I've taken out were prepared for the worst and have so many weapons that it feels unnecessary, Pete Sylvester's because I'm upgrading him, and Take Heart and Daring. This is the final Daniela deck build that I would be looking for if I did have unlimited experience if I were playing a proper 8-part campaign. But since I have a lot less than that, going into the final part of our starter campaign, this is what we'll be working with. And the same is true for Rex, that I'm just making the best deck I can for Scenario 3 because this isn't a proper full-length campaign, and in an 8-part campaign I'd be upgrading Rex differently, but as it stands, these are the upgrades I've taken. Occult Invocation as damage is just much worse than Occult Lexicon, and Occult Lexicon level 3 is probably the best damage card in the game, so I'm choosing to upgrade into that. We'll talk about its mechanics once we get into it, which will actually be at the very start of the first scenario. I've also cut my working hunches and my preposterous sketches. I just don't feel like I have the money to play these cards. In exchange, I've put cards that cost more money but are more worth playing, which are Pathfinder, which is an asset talent that lets me move as a free action once per turn, and the tarot card Death, which lets me just have a passive +1 to book, and if you have a tarot card at the start of the game, you just get to play it for free. And because I really want to get rid of working hunch and preposterous sketches, I chose to use my last 2 experience on Seeking Answers, because it's just a good way to get more clues quickly. I've just finished setting up the Devourer below, our final scenario, and before I start talking about the scenario itself, you'll notice that next to Rex now, I have a pile of these Bloodright cards. The reason for that is because of a mechanic from a later expansion called Bonded cards. It's what the Occult Lexicon uses. Essentially, the way Bonded cards work is you never put them directly into your deck, but instead, a different card in your deck will pull them into your deck when you play it. In the case of Occult Lexicon here, playing this will shuffle 2 of the Bloodrights into my deck and put the 3rd one into my hand. In terms of scenario setup, the only thing I did that won't necessarily happen every time is you pick one of these 4 scenarios at random, and I got the Agents of Cthulhu. So without further ado, let's start talking about and playing the actual scenario itself. Our first agenda, 1 of 3, has a 4 doom threshold. Our first act just needs 6 clues to advance. We start at the main path, which is connected to each other woods location and allows us to resign if we want to, but I mean, you know, it sounds a lot like losing. We're probably not going to be taking it up on that offer. As you can see, all of these locations have the woods tag top middle. The reason that's going to be important is because we're about to go to them and flip them over. And when we do, they're not going to stay identical locations. They're each going to be different places, and if they're still woods, they'll still be connected to the main path, but you might get lost and wind up somewhere else. So then, let's draw our opening hands and see what we're working with. I should also totally be using this Draw 1 button. It's very handy for exactly this sort of thing. The starting hand over here looks pretty good so far. I'm going to toss these events and look for ally assets, but other than that, we're doing great. And I more or less got back the same stuff I tossed, but still, the opening hand is quite good. For Rex, we redraw his weakness. I think I'm going to toss everything but Lucky Cigarette Case. I would keep Pathfinder, but I don't have very much economy right now, and I want to play something like Milan or Jeremiah Kirby, which means I won't have money to play Pathfinder alongside the Cigarette Case. And in this case, we didn't hit the stuff we wanted, but we'll live. So I think it's pretty easy to go first as Daniela. As our first two actions, we're going to play Stand Together, giving both of us 7 resources, and Emergency Cache to gain 3 resources and draw a card, because this is the upgraded Emergency Cache. And our last action is just going to be to play the 45. As the first action for Rex, we're going to walk into one of the woods. It doesn't go left to right unless otherwise indicated. The first location is still a woods location, so it's still connected to the main path. And it does still go back to the main path. We aren't lost and separated yet. But you'll see that it doesn't connect to the red squares, so I have to go back to the main path to get to any of these other wood locations. The Arkham Woods here is a 2-shroud location with 2 clues, and you investigate using Fist instead of the normal skill. Which unfortunately means that Rex has basically wasted his action, because he's not exactly going to be able to do that. I think the best thing for me to do is just move back with my second action, regret not having played Pathfinder, and play Lucky Cigarette Case for 2. And the reason I'm not trying to move into a new location is because I can't even investigate it this turn, and if I were to, I'd be further away from Daniela, which could work out negatively for me, because it means she can't give me guts and has to spend an action catching up to me, and then an action moving back to the woods after, or back to the main path, rather. So, top of the round, or rather, upkeep phase. Right on time, tarot card. The Beat Cop, however, is much appreciated. Top of the round, 1 of 4 Doom, and Evil cards. Okay, so this is part of what I was just talking about. Rex got his Young Deep One encounter card, so I'm immediately engaged with this enemy, and I take 1 Horror for being engaged by it because of its effect. Daniela hits Dissonant Voices and can't play assets or events. So Daniela is going to go first. She's going to engage this, and then she's going to shoot it at 6 to 3. We should probably see what these tokens do. That is -2, but I still place a Doom on him even though I passed. Squids are -3, and there are 2 squids in the bag now. Or is there only 1? I don't actually know. There's only the single squid. But because of the single squid and the -3, I'm going to use a second bullet, I think. Oh, Daniela engaged the deep one, so she's going to take the 1 Horror as well. I'm not in a great spot in terms of economy here, because if I don't use a bullet, I'm not guaranteed to kill it. Even with the bullet, I'm not guaranteed. There are 2 tokens that can miss. If I use toe-to-toe, then I'll kill it, but I'll also end up putting myself in a position where Daniela's taking a lot of damage and used a lot of resources, but I think I have to, because if I don't do it and Ancient Evils are one of the top 2 cards, I would progress the act a turn early, and that would suck for us. Alternatively, though, there's no decision being made because I can't play events, so we're just going to attack. And we're not going to use the bullet because we have to... The compounding odds of missing the shot and hitting Ancient Evils makes me believe in this, which is fine because it was right. 2 shots, or 1 shot for 2 damage and 1 punch for 3, he's dead. That is Daniela's turn. For Rex's turn, we're going to go into a woods location, and hopefully this one actually has something we can do in it. This one's investigated with foot, and not connected to the other woods locations. So he's going to move back again. And we're going to sincerely regret tossing my Pathfinder as we remember how this scenario works, and spend 3 resources to play our tarot card. Upkeep phase. We get the other tarot card, but we've only got 1 slot for it, so it doesn't do much. And Daniela gets her protective gear. Top of the round, 2 of 4 Doom. And our evil cards are the other Young Deep One on Rex. That's a little bit rough. It's a lot of horror coming in very quickly. Dissonant Voices goes away. And a Ghoul Minion on Daniela. And I can't believe I actually just forgot to mulligan. I forgot to put Rex's mulligan back into his deck. I've been very distracted with the fact I'm recording and playing incredibly suboptimally, for which I apologize. Hopefully I get over that relatively soon. And I noticed that while I was just sitting here thinking about the best way to handle this, because I really don't want to shoot over Rex and make a bad situation worse. I think what I'm going to do is just kill the Ghoul Minion, play Protective Gear, and engage the Deep One, and accept that I'm dealing with it next turn. That feels like shit, though. I think I'd rather play the Beat Cop. Yeah, I'll do that. So, Daniela goes first. I'm going to shoot at +6. Skull is -2. Is this a monster? Yeah, but that's still enough to kill. We're going to play our Beat Cop for 4. And we're just going to engage the Young Deep One so that Rex can do his clue-finding thing. Which, like, hopefully he will be able to do it. Looks like Daniela will have to investigate this location with her fist at some point if she's ever free of the monsters to do it. Rex is going to move down, though, and we're going to reveal this location. After this location, test brain 4. If you fail, take 1-1. Rex is racking up the horror, but hopefully he'll be fine. He has nothing relevant to commit to that. -2, I'll take 1-1. But I finally have a location I can investigate, although it is 6-4. I will commit deduction to it, to investigate at 7-4, and even if I don't pass by 2, I'll get the clues. That feels a little bit unnecessary to me. Because I also really want to pass by 2 to trigger the cigarette case, and I might want deduction later. So I'm just going to investigate at 6-2 straight up. Glad deduction wasn't in the test now. And now that I know I only have 1 test left to do it, I might commit deduction. I'd rather not still be here doing this next turn. I'll throw deduction at this one, since I've failed the first one catastrophically. That is -2, place 1 doom on an enemy. Jesus. Well, we lose a turn. And we don't trigger our cigarette case, because that's only up by 1. And that is the end of our round and the end of Agenda 1. Enemy phase, Daniela's going to get hit for 1-1. Upkeep phase, I don't know why I did that manually. And Eagle cards, which will, you know, we go to 3, there's 4 doom because Cultist is just brutal here, and we progress the agenda, which isn't that big of a deal, really. We shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck and discard cards on the top until a monster enemy is drawn, spawn that enemy on the main path, then place 1 doom on it. So we're going to continue as we've been, by just spawning a load of enemies directly on top of Daniela. Well, we discarded a lot of really dangerous treacheries before we hit that monster. Hey, it's another ghoul minion. Those were really good treacheries to discard. We get a copy of Ancient Evils, 2 copies of Rotting Remains, and both copies of Umarad's Wrath, and a Frozen in Fear and a Grasping Hands. Like, all of that's great to see gone. Even Dreams of Alea is rough. So yeah, as far as spawning a monster with Doom goes, that was pretty fine. And now all enemies get +1 fight and +1 evade. And if things seem like they're going horrifically wrong, they kind of are. Which also gets into a lot of people's main criticism of the Devourer below. That it's a scenario designed to make you lose. It's designed to introduce your players to the idea that sometimes you can't win. And this isn't even the borderline unwinnable part of the scenario that's happening right now. The scenario just as a whole is absolutely brutal, and you're expected to take a bad resolution from it, just which one is up to you. We'll get into that more as we go through it, but that's a big part of what the core campaign wants to teach players, is that sometimes you can't win, and sometimes losing is inevitable. It's about making the best of those bad situations. That's what Midnight Mass tries to teach you with partial completion, and that's what the Devourer below tries to teach you by just being absolutely brutal. Oh, and let's not forget to use Daniela's ability and deal 1 damage to this Deep Young. I reckon it'll matter quite a lot. So Daniela is going to go first for obvious reasons. And she's going to shoot both bullets left in her gun, 1 at each of these enemies. Because I can't really afford to be taking 1-1 constantly. -1 kills the deep one. I'm up +2 to that one and +3 to this one because they have +1 to fight. But none of that matters, they're both dead. I haven't been using assets with charges or ammunition before in this because I've just been drilling melee weapons in Daniela. 2 things of note when they run out of ammunition, or charges, or secrets, whatever they have. The first is that they stay equipped unless you're forced to discard them, either by a Mythos card or by replacing them with another item once your hand slots are filled. And this has 2 meaningful points. The first is that if you want it to be discarded so that you can use some sort of effect to recur it from your graveyard, you can't. You can't just choose to put this in your discard pile. And the second thing is that you don't have to. As long as Daniela has this gun equipped, she does not care about the Crypt Chill treachery at all. It'll kill an empty gun, it doesn't matter. It has an upside and a downside, but it's important to note that these are equipped unless something says to get rid of them. Anyway, we're 2 actions into this turn, and as our 3rd action, previously I wanted to equip the protective gear, but seeing as I've used all the bullets in my gun, I'm going to draw a card. Which turned out to be another gun, so that's helpful. On Rex's end, things have been going poorly. He's just been walking around all game, which he'll continue to do. He's going to move back to the main path and down to the Arkham Woods. We're going to continue regretting not keeping that Pathfinder. I was horrifically misremembering the Devourer below because we didn't enjoy it our first time through, and I haven't played it since. I guess what happened in my first playthrough is like people went to different paths and then they went to the one they needed to be at to do the relevant thing. I didn't really think of it like, oh yeah, Rex is just going to have to discover all of them because Daniela's going to be fighting nonstop. Anyway, there's no clues here, which means that the act is only progressible if we get all of these clues. Now the problem is a 2-shroud location with a foot test is pretty damn hard for us to pass, which is going to get into some strategizing later. For Rex's last action though, I'm going to take up that ability and use it to heal 1/1. And that'll be our round. There are no enemies alive, so upkeep phase, he finally gets Milan, and Daniela gets Vicious Blow. Top of the round, 1 Doom, 4 of 5, and evil cards. There are no cultists in play, so I'll be searching the deck for one and spawning it. I'm going to pick a generic cultist in case Daniela gets something that makes this hard to deal with, and put him in the 5th location so that Daniela can just investigate this location once she's done dealing with the Acolyte. For Daniela's evil card, it's a Ravenous Ghoul. Since Rex isn't going to be super helpful with getting these clues, I'm going to go first on Rex. I'm going to move back. I'm going to play Lita Chantler for a 0. And I'm going to play Occult Lexicon because it's clear that Rex is going to need to help fight at this point. Playing Occult Lexicon puts 1 Blood Right into my hand and shuffles the other 2 into the deck. For Daniela's turn, and now that Lita Chantler is here, she has +1 Fist and deals +1 damage to monsters, like this Vicious Ghoul, or this Ravenous Ghoul, rather. For my first attack, I'm just going to commit Overpower and Vicious Blow, because I don't want to take the attack of opportunity. So I'm attacking at a base value of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 3. He takes 1 from the basic punch, 1 from Vicious Blow, and 1 from Lita Chantler, killing him, and I draw a card off of Overpower. Which was my weakness. The whole point of this was to try to play my gun before this shit happened. How many enemies has Daniela fought so far? I think on average, she's had to kill like 2 enemies a turn every turn. Something ridiculous, right? Anyway, I'm just going to get punched for 1/1 direct damage because it's my weakness and it's mob goons. And then I'm going to shoot them at 6 to 3. What does Star do? Well, it doesn't do anything. But I do spend 1 ammunition to deal 2 damage. During the enemy phase, he'll hit me for 1/1 and I'll be able to kill him. Sort of sucks to take 2/2 here when I wasn't expecting to take anything. And that's it for the round. So enemy phase, the mob goons hits Daniela and we kill them with Daniela's reflect damage. The Acolyte doesn't move, upkeep phase. Did I not shuffle? I did shuffle. Just had a Blood Red on the top by coincidence. And Meat Cleaver on Daniela, right after he finally played another gun, which I suspect I didn't pay for because I was distracted by being mad about mob goons. Don't think she should have 7 bullets right now, or 7 resources, as it were. Same icon. Top of the round, 3 of 5 Doom. Evil cards. Ghoul Minion on Rex, and Ancient Evils for Daniela, which puts us at 4 of 5, just barely not getting destroyed by that Ancient Evils. Daniela looks like she can pretty reliably deal with this Ghoul Minion. So what I'm going to do on Daniela is, once again, I'm going to start my turn, meaning to play Meat Cleaver and Protective Gear and not do it. I'm going to spend my first action as Daniela just punching over at the Ghoul. Thanks to Lita, I'm punching at 7 to 2, 7 to 3 because of the agenda. And because of Lita, if I miss, I'll only deal 1 to Rex, but if I hit a Ghoul Minion, since he's a monster, I'll deal 2 and kill him, so just don't auto-fail. 7 to 3, like I said, just enough. Ghoul Minion is dead. Next, I'm going to move down to where this cultist is, who will engage me. And I don't actually have to deal with him, because when he hits me, he'll be killed. That said, I don't want to just take the damage. I'm sort of racking that up right now to play a weapon. I could just play Protective Gear. It seems like I need the action efficiency, like I'm pretty behind curve on Daniela. The problem is I can't use her ability on attacks opportunity, which would be incredibly helpful, but possibly overpowered. I'm going to take the damage. It's just 1 damage on Daniela to play Protective Gear for more money than I have. Never mind. In which case, I'm just going to punch I don't want to spend a bullet on this. I'll take the -4 risk. Not even close, he's dead. Now, you might be noticing that it's a little bit hard for me to get all the clues here. I'm going to talk about it now. One of the biggest criticisms of the Devourer below is that the optimal strategy tends to be just to hang out and prepare for the final agenda, rather than actually playing the scenario. And a part of it's this: you can very easily find yourself in positions where progressing is possible, but incredibly hard. For Rex's first action, I'm going to play Christopher Milan, which costs 4 resources, not 1. And for his next action, I'm going to draw a card. Eureka means I might actually be able to start doing tests down here. Another copy of Eureka or a True Understanding would let me do it, so I'm going to draw more cards. Hey, it's Pathfinder, right when I'm done moving forever. Right on time. So, top of the round, 4 of 5 Doom, Ancient Evils progresses the act, but upkeep first. 8 cards on Rex, so he doesn't have to discard anything, and Guard Dog and Daniela is much appreciated, but she's going to need some money. Top of the round, I just progressed it, 4 of 5 Doom. So, evil cards. Rotting Remains on Rex isn't that bad. We're testing at 3-3, but I'm going to use a resource to make it 5-3. I'd rather not take a load of horror. She's already taken enough. If you automatically fail, you fail as though you got 0. So I'd rather not take 3 horror damage for 3 cards, and I'll just take the pass. And another Acolytes. I'll put it here. Rex can deal with it. I'm pretty sure I'm making mistakes by like engaging with this at all, but we'll see. Actually, I'll put it over here, and then no one will ever deal with it, because the agenda regresses next turn regardless of whether or not we kill this Acolyte. So I'm just going to put him out of the way, somewhere we never need to be. This is the best location because you don't actually want to be here. This one, we could theoretically want to come to the heal at some point. I'm going to go first as Daniela. As her first action, she's going to play Protective Gear because she's just getting very low on health. And I think I'm just going to gain resources to play different weapons, whether it's Guard Dog or Meat Cleaver. Because I don't think Rex can get this last clue as much as I want him to. For now, I'm just going to gain 2 resources on Daniela. Because I don't recall how this scenario ends, but I do recall that we have some fights coming up, and that I don't feel like we can get clues here to progress yet. For Rex, though, we're going to be doing some jank stuff. We can finally talk about what this occult lexicon does, and boy howdy, isn't the answer, what doesn't it do? So, the whole point of occult lexicon is just that it puts these cards into your hand and deck. However, the upgraded version allows you to change all the 2s on it to 3s. What does that mean? Let's read Bloodright. It's a 0-cost event that commits for anything but a foot, and it draws 2 cards. Then I can discard up to 2 cards from my hand, and for each card I discard, I can either gain a resource or spend a resource to deal a damage to an enemy at my location. And this event doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. And of course, I can activate Occult Lexicon to turn those 2s into 3s, or shuffle the card in my deck instead of discarding it when I play it. So for now, because I'm trying to prepare for the future, and I want money and cards on Rex, I'm going to play Occult Lexicon for 2 instead of 3, and draw 2 cards. I'm already at 7 book, I don't need this magnifying glass, and I can't play this tarot card, so I'm going to discard both of those and gain 2 resources, and then shuffle the Bloodright back in. Rex feels so incredibly useless right now. It's very sad. I'm going to use Rex's signature asset to draw 2 cards, and it's feeling like by the time I have more clues, the game will be over. And I'm just going to start drawing cards, I think. Not entirely sure what I'm looking for, but Rex can't do anything at the moment. And this is the sort of thing I am looking for, where it gives me an ability to maybe investigate Arkham Woods. But that's the end of the round. So upkeep phase, we need to discard some cards over here. I believe we're up 2. Yeah, to get rid of 2 of these. And it seems to me the second Christopher Milan is never getting played. I believe this Perception is the least playable card in my hand. I could be wrong on that. Feels bad to be discarding Perception, but I think I have plans for all these other cards. Daniela's upkeep going to be a lot simpler. She's just going to lose all of her money. Good job getting it in May. This is the first time we've drawn her weakness. Paranoia just says Revelation, discard all your resources. Do you draw and then gain a resource, or vice versa? It says and, so I think you could choose either way, but also it says draw 1 first, so either way I'd be able to pick to have 1 resource. Our agenda advances. In player order, each investigator must test Brain 6. Each investigator who fails must search the collection for a random basic madness weakness and add it to his or her hand. I mean, that's essentially just an unpassable test. I could pump this via skill cards or guts and maybe pass it, but I think I'm just accepting that I'm getting madness weaknesses, so let's take them. This cultist loses his doom and gets it back instantly because of the tablet, or the cultist rather. And I'm going to get both weaknesses at the same time. Yeah, they both get them. These are all of the weaknesses in the game. And I'm just going to go through until I hit a madness for each of these characters. And the first one will be going to Rex just because I am so upset about that. So Rex's madness is a hidden card that does literally nothing. In a normal game, you'd have to perform this effect or get 2 less experience, but this is the finale, so all it does is reduce his hand size by 1. However, Daniela got amnesia, which is the hand size equivalent to paranoia. I discard all my cards but 1, which I think has to be the meat cleaver. That seems substantially worse than you would expect it to be. Usually advancing the act doesn't discard your entire hand, or agenda rather. So, earlier I said that the optimal strategy in this scenario is oftentimes just to hang out and wait, and part of the reason for that is this. The 5th agenda, or rather the 3rd agenda, says, first, when the agenda advances, if the investigators are still in Act 1, put the ritual site into play and spawn Umordhat there. Or, if you're in Act 2 or 3, then discard all the enemies at the ritual site and spawn Umordhat there. Because this just spawns the ritual site when you progress it. Eventually, you're going to have a path to victory in the scenario, even if you don't progress the agendas, or the acts rather. And not necessarily through my own choice, but this time it does look a whole lot like I'm going to have to just wait for it to progress itself, because I'm struggling so much with this Arkham Woods location. Anyways, it's our turn now, and since Daniela's last turn, she's discarded her entire hand and lost all her resources. And she can't actually play a meat cleaver anyway. So I'm just going to investigate at 6-2 in this Arkham Woods location with my fist, and hopefully get both clues before coming back to the main path, which I do. And that'll be Daniela's turn. I don't know if I have any use for these clues. I honestly don't remember the scenario very well at all. But hopefully I do. So Rex is drawn Seeking Answers, which I got during the previous upgrade phase. It'll let me discover clues at a connecting location, like the one that needs somebody to investigate with foot, instead of my current location, and it'll get 2 clues instead of 1. So I'll be spending 1 resource to do this, investigating at 5, 6, 7 to 2. And even if I get -4, like just on autofail. Yeah, easy. And because I passed by more than 2, I will be getting a card from the cigarette case, which has previously never went off. And we could advance the act now. I'm going to assume there's no way in which this is negative for us and do it. I spent my 6 clues. So when we progress the act, it puts the set-aside ritual site into play, and if any cultists got away, they would spawn there and try to stop us. Luckily for us, we got all the cultists, so there's nobody here. This connects to the main path. So to make this a little bit clearer, I suppose, I'm going to arrange it this way. And our new act just says if an investigator enters the ritual site, advance. Since nobody spawned and nothing's interrupting our progress, I'm just going to move up and advance the act. First, at the end of the round, there are fewer than 2 clues per investigator on ritual site. Add clues to it until it has 2 clues per investigator on it. So it's just going to regenerate to 4 every turn. This shuffles the encounter deck into the discard pile, discard cards from the top until 1 enemy is discarded, and then spawn each discarded enemy at the ritual site. Daniela's already taken her turn, so Rex will have to deal with it himself. And since we're on 2-player, we don't have to spawn more than 1 enemy, in case you were reading that and wondering what the hell I was doing. So we got a ghoul minion. I'm tempted to try to just punch it. Like 3-1's not great, it's probably a bad call. I'll use Bloodright, it's obviously the correct thing to do. And I'm going to be shuffling this one back into my deck. I draw 2 cards. When you're discarding cards from your hand, if you have something like this weakness that's bad for you, whether it's a weakness in your deck or an encounter card that's in your hand for some reason, You cannot choose to discard them. You can randomly discard them. That's acceptable. But you cannot ever choose to discard them. What's the shroud value here? 3? I don't think I'll be needing this perception. And it looks like we're done with Pathfinder as well. And I'll be spending 2 resources with those 2 cards to deal 2 damage to this ghoul. And we're shuffling in the Blood Right. I don't know if that made it obvious to you just how strong Occult Lexicon level 3 in Blood Rights is. But without delving too far off the beaten path of me showing you the game, Occult Lexicon level 3 is a recently released card that is egregiously powerful and probably needs to be changed. This card is offensive to me, and while I love how strong it is, I kind of hate how obviously correct it is to put it in every deck. And that's the end of the round. Enemies don't do anything. Upkeep phase. And we're going to have to discard some cards over here. I would like to keep all the cards that help me investigate, which looks like it's pretty much my whole hand. So I have to discard 1 card, and it's going to be Shortcut. Which, it's weird to be in a situation where it feels like Shortcut's the worst card in my hand, and if I had thought out my turn, I would probably have shortcutted Daniela into the ritual path with me. Which would have been an objectively better situation to be in. But alas, here we are. We're up to 2 of 5 Doom. It is 5, yes? Yes. And we draw our evil cards. We get another Acolyte. We're going to put him down here. Actually, I'd like to make sure he connects to this location so Daniela could potentially clear out both of these guys. This Arkham Woods connection connects to Hourglass and Diamond, not Moon, so I'm going to throw him... These are essentially the same thing, just in this location. If either of them connects to Moon, I'd prefer that one, and this one does. I don't think I'll be moving Daniela here, but if I for some reason feel I need to, I would like to keep that option open. And that was Rex's card, so we need to draw 1 for Daniela as well. She's going to test 3 foot and take 1 damage for each point she fails by. Or she would if I hadn't played Protective Gear, which I should have talked about when I played it. It's more than just a 4-cost suit of armor that gives you 3/3 soak. It also has reaction. When you draw a Hazard Treachery, deal 1 damage and 1 horror to Protective Gear, cancel that card's Revelation effect. Normally, I'd probably do that. This can deal me up to 3 damage. I think I might be in a circumstance where damage matters to me disproportionately more than horror does, though. Where I'd be willing to put 2 damage on this and 1 damage on myself just to keep the Sanity Soak on Protective Gear. And while that might be true, I'd much rather use the ability on Protective Gear and feel good about myself than taking the dice roll, and it would have been 3 damage, right? Yes, it would have been 3 damage. Like, even knowing, like, for a fact that I would get... It's just obviously correct to use Protective Gear. I was trying to convince myself that I cared about the horror too much, but it's too much damage to ever voluntarily take. Now, we're currently at 3 of 5 Doom, and we didn't actually read our act, which is kind of important. We are now given the action to spend 1 clue and test Brain 3 or Foot 3, and if we succeed, we place 1 clue on the act. And if there are 2 clues per investigator on this act, then we advance. So we need 4 clues. Wait, yeah, we need 4 clues to take the test 4 times, and then we have to pass 4 3-head tests. That's going to be a minimum of 8 actions, which it looks like we would have the time to do. But it's going to be a lot less than 8 actions, so let's be real. I'm going to play Deduction, or rather, I'm going to play Read the Signs for 2, alongside a Deduction and a Eureka, which will get me a base cluing value of 10. If I pass by 2 or more, I'll get 4 clues. Otherwise, I'll get 3. Squid. -5. There are no ancient ones in play, so I just take a -5, which is 5 to 3, and that's still a pass. So I'll search the top 3 for my Eureka, and I will take this Crack the Case. My Deducting gets a clue, Rex's ability gets a clue, Read the Signs gets 2 clues, and Lucky Cigarette Case draws a card. I should have shuffled my deck. And then I will be taking all 4 of these clues. And then I will play both copies of Crack the Case for 3 resources each, bringing me up to 8. It took a while for Rex to do anything because of how jank the bottom half of the map is, but we got there. Now, since I have 5 cards in hand, I can use these resources for this test on the Act card. And I'm going to go ahead and do that twice. Each time I take this test, I'm going to spend 1 resource. Actually, I'll spend 2 to pass at -4 and -3, and with these tokens that are -3, the tablets as well. So we're taking 2 tests here as my last 2 actions. We just don't want to see... I need to pay for the second one as well. We just don't want to see squid or auto-fail. So that's 1 clue spent, effectively, and the second one as well. And both of these are now on the Act. 2 more, and we are going to get a resolution. I've actually never seen what happens when you do this. I've only seen the other way the scenario ends. For Daniela's turn, we're going to try to actually, prevent this whole doom thing from happening. I'm going to move down here as my first action, which engages with this Acolyte. And I'm just going to punch him at 6 to 3. -1 kills him. My last action, I'm going to move into the room with the other Acolyte. End of Investigator phase, so now we go to enemy phase. He's going to punch me for 1 damage. And I'm going to use Daniela's ability to kill him. And now we go into the upkeep phase. That magnifying glass just wants to get drawn, doesn't it? And as always, now that we've gotten to the end of the scenario with our limited number of bullets, we've drawn all of our melee weapons back to back, with only 1 of our allies in play. I can't help but think I have built this Daniela deck wrong. I also do feel that I've gotten sort of unlucky, because every time I've played this deck, I've drawn all my melee weapons in the top 14 and seen 1, maybe 2 allies. So, yeah. I feel like this is bad variance for Daniela, but it certainly feels terrible, and I don't know if it's consistently this bad, or if it's just my bad deck building. I'll have to play it more to find out, I suppose. Anyway, top of the round, 2 of 5 Doom, no Cult is contributing anymore. Dreams of Verleia. So Dreams of Verleia gives me -1 head and -1 sanity, which means that now if I get to 8 sanity instead of 9, or 8 horror instead of 9, I'll die. And it gives you the ability to test Brain 3 to get rid of it, but, I mean, if you can test Brain 3 to get rid of it, you probably don't care that you have it that much to begin with. But the reality is I can't really do that without spending money on higher education, and I could just spend higher education on the checks anyway. And Dissonant Voices will once again prevent Daniela from playing anything. Not that she really needed to in this case, but it is still a minor inconvenience. And now it's our turn, and for the first time all scenario, I feel like I'm just really ahead. I mean, I probably just use my first 2 actions to end the scenario. Which is particularly funny, considering that for a while there I didn't feel like I could progress at all, and was going to be showing you a very different scenario. But yeah, I'm going to spend 4 resources, 2 on each check, to gain +4 on my brain of 2. I'm testing 6 to 3, essentially, yes, to put these 2 clues on the Act. So -4 squid and auto-fail are what prevent me from winning the scenario. So there's 1 failure and 1 pass. So we are up to 3 of 4 on finishing this scenario. For my last action, I need more clues. This thing refreshes its clues back to 4 every round. And I'm just going to investigate normally at 5, 6, at 6 to 3. I'll spend my last resource to play this magnifying glass, actually, to investigate at 7 to 3. And I'll do it with burning the midnight oil, because that's obviously correct. -3, I don't get Lucky Cigarette Case, and I don't get Rex's ability, but I still get a clue and a resource from Milan. On Daniela's end, I'm willing to move to Arkham Woods, use that ability to heal for 1/1, and then move to the main path. Actually, I'm going to stay on Arkham Woods for this turn. That way if a cultist spawns, I can spawn it on main path and kill it on my way back. And for my last action, I'm going to gain a resource, because if I draw an ally, I need the money to play the ally and the weapon. And if I draw cards, I'm getting myself in that situation where I don't have enough resources much faster. Which will be her final action. End of the round, we go into upkeep phase, discard the Dissonant Voices. Top of the round, 3 of 5 Doom, and we draw our evil cards. Rex will be taking a 3-foot test, which I will throw True Understanding at. I'm still probably going to fail, but I'd like to take less damage. Actually, no, I'm going to hold True Understanding to stay at 5 cards. It's fine. -2, I'll be taking 2 damage, which means my good friend Alita Chandler will be taking 2 damage. And evil card on Daniela is a ghoul minion. No problem at all. I'm going to go first on Daniela. I'm going to shoot the ghoul minion at 5, 6, 7 to 3. Actually, it's only 7 to 2 because this agenda is not making the enemy stronger. And that is a hit and a kill. Next action, I'm going to heal for 1/1 again. And last action, I'm going to replace this gun with a machete for 3. I'm going to investigate with Rex first, because that's going to be happening no matter what this turn. And it's just going to be a straight test of 7 to 3. -2, it ends up being 5 to 3. I get a resource from Milan. I get to draw from Lucky Cigarette Case. And I get 2 clues from Rex's ability. So this leaves me with 2 chances to finish the scenario. And I actually kind of like that as a live gameplay tutorial, it's ending this way. Because you have no idea what could have happened, what in the hell I was talking about earlier, and it leaves a lot to the imagination. So, let's go ahead and do it. First test, spending 2 to be up 3. And that's the scenario. This goes on to the act, and we progress. Resolution 1. The story text could be summarized, but we win. We prevent this from ever happening. That's kind of an anticlimax compared to what I was expecting to show you. But on the other hand, I'm kind of glad it is. Because it did show off a lot of this scenario being brutal and hard to get through in the early half. And it did show off a lot of like the spirit of Arkham Horror of trying to get through things that seem very bad for you and almost unavoidable. And also, when I was making this deck, I looked at Seeking Answers. I looked at this card, and I was like, do I really want to put that in the deck? Like, I know it's a good card, I've played with it before, but is this the best way to spend my experience? And I'm glad I did, because it's the reason this actually happened. It's the only reason we were able to get the clues to progress. Otherwise, this location that required Foot to investigate would have just completely stopped us in our tracks. But yeah, that's it. We got Resolution 1. We prevented Umar Hoth from being summoned. We suffer 2 mental trauma from the ordeal of this. We gain experience equal to the victory display, whatever it was, plus 5 more because we saved Arkham from a terrible fate, and the investigators win. But let's talk about 2 more things before we continue from here. Our victory display is empty. None of these locations have victory on them, and so we get 5 victory points, or 5 experience points. But Arkham Horror is not a game that's meant to be replayed like this. But all this talk of experience is sort of misleading to new players because you aren't expected to keep playing your investigators after you finish a campaign. After all, Rex has 3 mental trauma at this point, Daniela has 2. Both of those are going to be sort of debilitating, even with all that experience. And the reality is, you're not expected to take these characters in the first campaign into Dunwich. You're expected to pick new investigators, play through Dunwich with them, and then when you finish Dunwich, maybe you play through the Forgotten Age, and you pick new investigators for that too. So, when you're playing a campaign, you're not trying to take one investigator for as many journeys as you can, you're just trying to get through the one campaign that you're currently playing. And the second thing I want to talk about is death. What happens if you die? Because if at some point Daniela got overwhelmed by enemies, her dying doesn't mean I don't play the character in the next session. Let's say that Daniela had been killed by the Ghoul Priest in scenario 1, right? If that had happened, she would drop any clue she has on her location, she'd remove her investigator from the board, and the game would just go on without her. Daniela would just take a trauma of the type of damage that killed her. If she died to both at the same time, she would get to pick which one she got. And the only way a character is actually dead and unplayable, well, there are 2. The first is you get so much trauma that you would spawn dead. If you play someone like Roland Banks with 5 sanity and a weakness that deals mental trauma, you can feasibly die from having more trauma than maximum capacity for damage. The other way you can die is through bad resolutions. There are some scenarios where if you fail, you die. Your character is either instantly killed or driven insane and they are rendered unplayable. And in those situations, what you're supposed to do is you just come back as a different investigator with a level 0 deck. But those situations are few and far between. You will very rarely find yourself in a situation where you die, actually lose your investigator in Arkham Horror. But that's it for now. Rex is a really damn good investigator. Daniela is not half bad. She did very admirably throughout all of this. But that's it for this gameplay tutorial. Next time I'll be playing the game for real. I'll be talking in much less basic terms, playing very quickly. And hopefully, if you're just watching my channel because you like me, you have enough information now to understand what's going on in those videos. if you take anything out of this video other than general gameplay advice, let it be that you should probably implement some taboo list changes, specifically the ones for Rex and Milan Christopher. Playing Board Games is the biggest YouTube channel for Arkham Horror, and one of the people on that channel just introduces new players to the game by saying, oh yeah, Rex Murphy, he was misprinted. His ability is once per round. Milan Christopher, that guy was misprinted. He's only available to be used once per round. That's what you should do. The only reason I didn't is because in a tutorial series, if like I start the game and it says Rex Murphy and the first word is mutated, period, that's going to immediately make you ask questions. So I didn't want to use the taboo list just to avoid that question. Anyways, from here on out, every video I make will be using the full taboo list. The next series I'll be doing, I'll probably do some card analysis videos and some game balance discussion videos. But when I get back from the next campaign, the first proper campaign, we're going to be playing Return to the Patriarchosa with Lily Chen and Jenny Barnes. And I'll talk more about those in Session 0 for that campaign. I've been Rather Incoherent. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, and like, comment, subscribe, and all that other YouTube shill nonsense that I'm very bad at, but I hear is very important.